Thomas entered their cabin early, waking the boys for breakfast. "Good morning, you three. I have some news," he exclaimed. "What is it?" Logan asked, rubbing his eyes. "You'll be getting a new cabin mate later today." Excitement surged through Roman as he smiled and looked at the empty bed to his left. It would finally be filled. He quickly hopped out the door towards the mess hall, not waiting for Logan and Patton. They were serving waffles and strawberries for breakfast. Later, however, Roman was becoming impatient. He rambled to Logan about how long this new kid was taking as they wandered the open field. As the two walked on the edge of the far side, a white and black spotted baby bunny popped out from the tall yellow grass. "Aw!" Roman exclaimed. "It was so cute!" Logan quickly bent down over the rodent to examine it while Roman bounded around, mostly squealing. He saw Patton enter the clearing and waved him over as Logan started scribbling as a notebook. A few minutes later is when Roman met Virgil, and oh boy was he cute as frick. "Who are you?" he'd asked. The boy to whom he'd spoken to seemed to panic for a moment before Patton said it was their new roommate. Roman was having a hard time not having an excited seizure. This beautiful creature was sharing a cabin with him. How could this summer get any better? Logan introduced himself, and they certainly made their way to dinner. The day had been fun. The new kid, Roman now was named Virgil, was awesome. He was funny, not too loud, and had the perfect amount of sass. And it had only been the first day. When they entered their cabin for the night, Roman was greatly anticipating the days to come with this mysterious boy who claimed the bed next to his own. It was all he could think about. It was time for them to get changed, which hadn't gone down well with Virgil. Roman had gone to bed fairly annoyed that he couldn't do much to help the boy. That night, Roman woke to a quiet sound. Being mostly asleep, he couldn't really tell what the soft noise was. He slowly opened his eyes. It was still dark out. Rays of moonlight poured through the two windows on the far wall. The low sound that woke him continued. Roman slowly sat up and rubbed his eyes before glancing around, his eyes locked onto the source of the sound. Virgil was in an upright, fetal position, and he was quietly sobbing to himself. His hands covered his face, so Roman couldn't see most of it. Patton and Logan remained asleep, unaware of what was happening. Roman carefully got up and made his way to the side of Virgil's bed, being careful not to make any fast movements. When he got there, Virgil still hadn't noticed the other. Roman calmly placed a hand on Virgil's shoulder, causing the smaller boy to squeak in surprise and look up. Tear tracks stained his face. Virgil blinked, releasing 2 more tears to roll down his face. "Roman, what are you doing awake?" he asked in a shaky voice. "I should be asking you that question," Roman interjected. Virgil looked away, slightly embarrassed. It was his first day, after all, and now someone who allegedly likes him just found him crying. Fabulous. Roman placed his hand on his hips stubbornly and waited the other's answer. I had a bad dream," Virgil mumbled into his sleeve. It was still hard for him to breathe steadily, and he was hoping Roman would go back to sleep soon, because he couldn't keep it together for long. "Oh." Roman sat on the edge of Virgil's bed. "May I ask what about?" "No," Virgil thought. He knew that he'd burst into tears if he tried. He managed to shake his head, and Roman hesitantly nodded. He wanted to help, but it was obvious from the last few hours he'd known Virgil that he wasn't a people person, and you had to gain his trust slowly. Roman heard Virgil hiccup again and looked over to the other. The dark-haired boy had hidden his face in his arms once more. Roman felt his heart break as he watched his little storm cloud. Yes, it was his little ball of lightning, be in so much distress. Roman took a deep breath and decided to do his best at comforting the other. He racked his brain for the tips Pat had taught him about how to calm someone down. He got up so that he was on the other side of Virgil and rubbed the other's back. Virgil lifted his head out of his arms, but still rested it on top of them. "Breathe in for 4, Roman said calmly. Virgil complied. "Hold for 7. Virgil held his breath. Out for 8. Virgil exhaled and repeated the cycle a few more times. When he finally felt calm enough, he looked over to Roman, who was still there next to him. Thanks for helping me, Ro. You didn't have to," he said. Roman scoffed. "Of course I did. Why wouldn't I?" Roman had managed to keep his cool with his normal overdramatic persona, but on the inside, he was freaking out. "Oh my god, he called me Ro. Oh my god, he gave me a nickname. That's so cute. Can he get any more adorable?" Virgil shrugged and looked away. There was a small smile on his face. As much as Roman's loud banter could be annoying sometimes, he still found it amusing. Roman was just so genuine. They stayed like that for a while until Roman was sure Virgil had fallen asleep again. He carefully laid the other down and tiptoed to his own bed. The next day was cooler than the day before, as well as cloudy. Roman put on his favorite red and gold sweater. It had a gold crown on the front and his last name, Prince, on the back. Since Roman, Logan, and Patton were used to waking up at the designated time, it was second nature. Virgil, however, was still sleeping after they all got ready. Patton noticed and giggled. Look at the little kiddo. I almost want to let him sleep. Roman knew that was sleep the other needed, but the camp rules are rules. He has to wake up, Logan said, straightening his tie in the mirror. We have to be in the mess hall in 7.52 minutes. Patton crossed his arms and stuck his tongue out at his boyfriend playfully. I know, but look how adorable he is. He's just like a little kitten. I suppose, Logan responded and shrugged. He went over to Patton and kissed his forehead. Hang on, Pat exclaimed excitedly whispered. He went out and grabbed a long piece of stiff yellow grass. Watch this. Roman and Logan observed curiously as Patton snuck to the side of Virgil's bed and poked him a couple times in the nose. Virgil lifted a hand to itch his nose and went back to sleeping. Roman was focusing on holding in his giggles, while Logan just shook his head with an amused smile. Patton waited a few minutes before poking him again. Virgil's nose scrunched and he readjusted his face the other way. Patton walked away, having a hard time not laughing. He didn't want to wake Virgil up that way. He walked back after composing himself, but almost burst out again when he saw Roman in the same state. Logan rolled his eyes, still smirking, and walked out the door. Patton went to the opposite side of Virgil's bed and poked him once more. This time, Virgil's eyes opened, confused and annoyed. Patton lost his composure and burst out laughing. Roman also lost the sight of Patton, and they were both laughing. Virgil sat up. What's so funny? You sleep like a kitten, Patton squealed, and stuck out his tongue again. Virgil's face became red, and he looked over at Roman, who thought his little storm cloud getting flustered was adorable, and he knew there was at least a little pink on his face as well. Whatever, Virgil grumbled, getting up. He grabbed his bag and went to the bathroom. You can go ahead, Pat, Roman said, and sat on his bed. I'll wait. Wouldn't want Lo getting impatient, would we? Patton scoffed. I'll have you know that Logan is one of the most patient people I've ever met. They both chuckled. Ew, Roman teased. Gross. Patton laughed. Yeah, I'll go catch up with him. See you in a little bit. With that, he skipped out the door. What Roman didn't know is that as soon as Patton found Logan, he was excitedly chirping about how Roman totally has a crush on Virgil, who had just exited the bathroom, changed out of his PJs. Roman was skimming through a book that Patton had recommended him earlier to see if it was any good. Virgil cleared his throat and Roman looked up. Good morning, he said as he stood. The others already left, and we should too if we want to be at breakfast in time. Virgil nodded. They left for the mess hall, just making it there on time. That day there was eggs or French toast and bacon. That afternoon, Virgil and Patton were sitting on the front steps to their cabin. Because of the weather, there were no activities planned for that day. They were watching Logan tinker with some small robot. Roman was inside the cabin, but came back out and sat next to Virgil, who had his earbuds in and wasn't paying attention. Suddenly an arm wrapped around Roman's shoulders. Hey, guys. Great. It was Remus. How's my favorite little brother doing? Roman huffed, and Virgil noticed the other boy, who had just appeared and pulled out an earbud, raising an eyebrow. Fine, Roman grumbled. He loved his brother, but he was just not in the mood for the other's antics right now. Patton looked over at the voice's source. Oh, hey, Remus. What's up? I don't know, just bored. Remus smirked and booped Roman's nose. Thought I'd see what you guys are up to. Virgil was about to ask who this guy was when Remus laid eyes on him. Oh, and who is this? He asked, squishing between Roman and Virgil and giving Virgil a confident side hug, oblivious to Virgil's awkward and surprise at the action. Remus, Roman said in a warning tone. Roman just looked over at him with a smile and slowly lifted his hands off of Virgil while retaining eye contact. Roman, how rude of you. Aren't you going to introduce me to your new friend here? Roman sighed and gestured to his brother. Virgil, this is my brother, Remus. And then he motioned from Remus to Virgil. Remus? Virgil. Charmed, I'm sure, Remus chirped, still taking up much more of Virgil's space than he appreciated. Virgil didn't really know what to say and gave a pleading glance at Roman. Bro, he started, but was interrupted by Remus bouncing up and hopping over to Logan. What you working on there, calculator watch? Virgil looked at Roman confusedly. He just shook his head. My brother is definitely something else, that's for sure. He doesn't mean any harm. That's just the way he is. Don't worry, he'll grow on you. Trust me, Virg. Virgil nodded and looked back to the others. Patton had joined the two by the little gadget, and they were all laughing at something Remus had said. Virgil did trust Roman, so he decided to keep an open mind on Remus. First impressions only said so much, after all. It started pouring shortly after, so they all settled on playing whatever board games they could find inside. Remus was still there, but Virgil found out that he was okay. Aside from the occasional disturbing remark and strange humor, Remus acted a lot like his brother. It was obvious they were very close. So far, Patton had won 2 games of solitaire, and Roman 1 game of slapjack. Logan even did a few card tricks. Remus stumbled upon a Monopoly game, which they were in the middle of playing. Remus was the boat, Patton the dog, Logan was the car, Roman was a top hat, and Virgil was a thimble. Somehow, Virgil had found his way onto Roman's lap during their time playing. No one either noticed or cared, including the two themselves. Virgil eventually fell asleep, so they put his money and property back into the game. Logan eventually won. The game had taken at least 3 hours, and it was already dark. The rain had not let up, so a counselor showed up to take Remus back to his own cabin. "Ta-ta!" he said before disappearing out the door. When it was time to get ready for bed, Roman finally made the connection that Virgil was on his lap, sleeping. Logan and Patton teased him a bit for being oblivious to his crush being on his lap for the past few hours. "Pat," Roman whined. "Stop. What should I do? I don't want to wake him up." Patton shrugged and laid on his bed facing Roman. They talked for a while, and Roman stayed in the same spot, determined to let Virgil get the sleep that he needed. Logan always went to bed at the same time, so they knew there wasn't much to do there. Patton eventually fell asleep as well, and Roman was left alone. He was finally allowed to bask in what was happening. He took a deep breath and carefully readjusted Virgil so he was carrying him bridal style, and slowly stood up. Roman walked to Virgil's bed and set him down. When he was about to tuck the other in, Virgil started shaking. Roman quickly grabbed onto again, and the shaking stopped. It wasn't shivers, more like a panicked and desperate shake. Not knowing what else to do, Roman took Virgil into his own bed and laid them both down. Virgil wrapped his arms around Roman and hid his face in the other's torso. Roman smiled and ran his fingers through his emo nightmare's black hair. Before falling asleep, he could have sworn he heard a noise. "Is that purring?" The next morning, Patton blinked awake. It was still too early to get up, but the sun had already risen. He yawned and stretched, sitting up to readjust himself. He was not expecting what he saw. Roman and Virgil were asleep on Roman's bed and were in the cutest position ever. He quickly scrambled to wake Logan to show him the adorable display laid before him, but apparently he'd moved a little too fast because the blanket caught his leg, sending him falling onto the floor with a loud yelp. Pat?" A voice came from the other side of the room. He'd woken Virgil. "Uh-oh."